Our next session is entitled Ask a Social Worker. Remember how to ask those questions. We want to get those answered for you. Our presenter is Manisha Finkel. Manisha is a licensed clinical social worker at the University of Michigan's Movement Disorder and Ataxia Clinic. Let's head on out to Ann Arbor. Manisha.
Hello, everyone. My name is Manisha Finkel, and I am a social worker at the University of Michigan in the Ataxia Clinic. I first wanted to thank all of the conference organizers and those of you who are participating. It is truly an honor and a privilege to be able to share with you all, and I hope that my discussion is helpful in having a better understanding of insurance coverage and navigating common care needs that we so often see in our clinic. And we can move on to the next slide. So today I will be talking about insurance coverage as it relates to therapy. So this would be physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy, also genetic testing, durable medical equipment, home modifications. I also wanted to briefly discuss disability insurance and options that may be available should work become increasingly more difficult. So next slide. Therapy can be very beneficial for people in improving or maintaining their current level of functioning. Therapy is often needed on a continuous basis when the goal specifically is to maintain. The challenge is that insurance companies have policies that only cover a certain amount of sessions or until an individual has improved to their maximum level of functioning. Once a person reaches that point, it can become very difficult for insurance to continue to cover services. The issue that many people encounter is receiving coverage when they need therapy to maintain their functioning rather than improve. Therapy that is needed to maintain functioning is called maintenance therapy, and sometimes using that terminology can be helpful in advocating for continued care coverage. If you do happen to experience this, my suggestion would be to contact the ordering provider's office and just to talk with the clinical staff about options and advocacy that may be needed to get the services covered. Physical therapists, speech therapists, and occupational therapists are permitted to provide maintenance therapy. It will just need some advocacy sometimes to get those services covered, and just keep in mind that sometimes this can be a little bit of a battle to get that service covered. Also, some providers do not always offer this benefit. So again, I would just recommend reaching out to your provider and clinical staff to assist you with this. I also wanted to mention that if for any reason you require a home safety evaluation to determine what home modifications might be needed and any recommendations needed in helping you navigate your home safely, occupational therapy services for a home safety evaluation may be extremely helpful. I have often seen that this is covered as long as physical therapy services have also been ordered. So I would just check in with your ordering provider about this as well. Next slide. So genetic testing. Cost of genetic testing really does vary based on your insurance policy. Other factors would be the laboratory that is completing that testing, also who is ordering the testing on your behalf, and the ordering entity's relationship with that lab. So if they have some sort of agreement with that lab, that also might impact cost. Insurance coverage may also require pre-authorizations or other documentation to cover the testing. The bill may only partially be covered. Again, this all would depend on your insurance policy, the lab, and who is ordering that testing. So I would suggest discussing this with the provider ordering the genetic testing to kind of see what options are available for you and if there's any assistance that could be provided. If assistance is not directly provided through the clinic, it may also be beneficial to inquire about sliding scale or income-based assistance. Also, a payment plan might be a really good option, but there also might be community support and assistance available. So I would also check in with your provider as well. If there's a social worker on staff, they might also be familiar with community resources or any assistance that could be provided in covering your genetic testing. Next slide, please. Thank you. Durable medical equipment. So equipment coverage varies and can also change over time. Equipment that we often see requested are things like walkers, wheelchairs, power scooters, motorized chairs, shower chairs, things like that. Insurance policies sometimes require additional information or evaluations to approve coverage. So I would always ask why something wasn't covered if insurance doesn't cover it for some reason. So for example, if you if you need a certain piece of equipment, they might require like a physical therapy evaluation um, uh, or documentation from a doctor um, expressing why this equipment is needed, and then they may cover. So this would require a little bit of advocacy as well. So always check in with your care team, um, or the durable medical equipment company to kind of see what your options might be. Other things to consider are things like loan closets for durable medical equipment needs. A lot of people will donate their equipment that is no longer needed, and then you can just pick that up at a local loan closet. But that will also depend on your area and what's available. There also might be community grants for assistance. So that would be another thing to check in with your provider and the clinical staff to see if there are any grants or assistance in your area. I will also, at the end of my presentation, give an overview of some community resources that we often see. And so that would be helpful to maybe reach out to those resources as well to see if they have suggestions. Next slide. So home modifications, common inquiries that we receive are things like stair lifts or ramps, sometimes some bathroom modifications, things like that. They are typically not covered by insurance, but it is still good to check. Sometimes a physician, again, would have to declare that the equipment is a medical necessity through their documentation that can be submitted. This would not guarantee coverage, but it might impact that. So again, some advocacy may be needed. There also may be grants in your area or assistance that can be provided. Again, that will be based on where you live. Payment plans may also be a good option for covering home modification needs. I wanted to provide a couple things that may be helpful. This would not only apply to home modifications, but also any durable medical equipment needs. Veteran benefits. So if you are a veteran, check in with your local VA benefits office or medical center to inquire if you may qualify for home modification assistance. Also, long-term care policies. Sometimes long-term care policies can assist in covering home modification. So I always suggest just checking in if you do have a long-term care policy to see if that's a benefit that you are eligible to receive. I also wanted to mention Medicaid. So Medicaid may assist with some home modifications. Again, this is something that is not a guarantee, but you may also be eligible for other forms of assistance based on income. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what options that you may have should work duties become difficult. This is something that we often see in our clinic, and we assist families with navigating, and I thought this would be really helpful to include. First, I wanted to talk about work accommodations because this is often the first step when work becomes too difficult. You can request a medical letter or have formal documentation submitted, depending on what your employer's requirements would be. And then you request those accommodations with work with your employer. Accommodations would allow you to continue work under specific guidelines for safety. This may include switching to a position that is seated. Given the circumstances right now, sometimes it's even just working from home for safety. I would first check in with your employer about the process and then connect with your provider about completing any documentation that may be needed. There is also employer provided disability insurance, which may be an option for you if you're considering pursuing disability. I would start by connecting with your employer about what that process looks like and any paperwork that's needed. This does vary by employer. Some employers require you to start with medical leave, then move on to short-term disability, then move on to long-term disability. Any and all paperwork for this would go through your provider. I would also just note that this process sometimes does take a while. So it's always good to act as soon as possible and not wait until it's too urgent. Another thing to consider if you're not pursuing employer provided disability insurance is supplemental security insurance and Social Security disability insurance. These benefits are offered through the Social Security Administration. Supplemental security insurance, or SSI, is designed to help individuals with high care needs who have limited income by providing income for basic living needs. Social Security disability is designed to provide payment to individuals with a disability who have worked long enough and have paid into Social Security. I would recommend contacting your local Social Security office to determine if you are eligible for these benefits. This process is a little, I'm sorry, this process is a little bit confusing. So it's always good to, again, contact your local Social Security office just to kind of talk about it. I would call the local office over the 1-800 number just because the likelihood of connecting with somebody is a lot higher. You can also go to the Social Security website and look at the checklist that they have available and see about eligibility and criteria prior to applying for those benefits. If you happen to be denied for any reason for any benefits, we do recommend looking for a local lawyer that specializes in this area. So in our area, we have the Law Center for Social Security Rights. That office may differ in the title based on your area, but they can be very helpful in navigating this process and assisting you with gathering information that might be needed for you to be approved for that. So that would be one of my suggestions. And next slide. Lastly, I wanted to pass along some helpful resources to you. I would suggest connecting with your local clinic to learn about specific resources in your area, though. First one is the Area Agency on Aging, and this also can be sometimes called Council on Aging or various other names. They provide resources to older adults and adults with disabilities. Every agency works a little bit differently, but they're able to provide you with resources based on your needs. So, for example, things that companies can assist with are finding lists for things, so home modifications, home care lists, facilities being, if you need independent living, group homes, assisted living, skilled nursing homes, but also other supportive community resources that you may be eligible to receive. So I definitely suggest reaching out to them for resources. Second would be your local disability network, which provides similar support to the Area Agency on Aging with a focus on individuals with disabilities of all ages. The names for these resources, again, may differ based on location. Lastly, I wanted to encourage you all to reach out to your local ataxia clinic or clinical staff, or also local ataxia support. So also including the National Ataxia Foundation. This will help in providing guidance and locating services for support, also just to help you with navigating your care needs and providing advocacy for you. So that is all that I have today. Thank you so much for listening. And I do hope that this discussion was helpful for you in understanding services and supports that may be available to you.